Welcome. Thank you for joining us at Empowering Creatives to Live Their Dreams. I'm Jessica Osrick. Today we have President and Chief Creative Officer at Trio Solutions, Inc. She has a background in publishing and creative leadership and has shaped Trio's culture of innovation and giving back. Let's welcome Jenny Dennis.
Hi.
Welcome, Jenny.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to jumping into your journey. Jenny, can you take us back to the beginning of your journey and talk to us about what initially drew you to the world of marketing and communications?
Yeah, so this is actually a pretty interesting story, and I think relatable to a lot of people because most people have either had a job in food and beverage or retail. I feel like it's just like a rite of passage, right? Whether you were a teenager, maybe in high school or college, just trying to make some extra money. I feel like most people can check either the retail or the food and beverage box. So I'll take you back to that. I was actually in school with a biology major. I was going to be in science. And I had a part-time job. I was a bartender at a fine dining restaurant in Bedford, New Hampshire. That's where I was born and raised. And I had these regular customers that would come in, these two gentlemen. Their names were Edward and Kevin, and they would come in and we had really good rapport. And one of the jobs of the bartenders at the upscale restaurant was to always try to upsell, right? Like get them to get a nicer bottle of wine or get them to order the steak instead of the chicken, like that kind of stuff. And so we were trained a little bit on sales techniques and the fine art of being true to the brand of the restaurant and like kind of owning the essence of that. And I thought that that was really intriguing. And so, anyways, I had these two gentlemen and they would come in all the time and I was constantly selling them, but they were observing me as I was working the bar and selling other people. And I was really good at the job. And so, come to find out, they owned an ad agency. And so they came to me one day and they said, "Hey, we know you're in school, but like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, have you ever thought about this and that?" And they were telling me all this stuff. And they said, "Well, we own an advertising agency. We're in downtown in Manchester, which there's not a lot of big cities in New Hampshire, but that's one of the bigger cities. And you should really think about this. You're so good at selling. You're so creative. Like you do all." And I just never even thought anything about it. So fast forward, I end up going in there for an interview and I end up getting a job at this marketing agency and I was in business development. And so they were like, "Hey, if you can sell people at this restaurant, you can sell people these marketing services." Meanwhile, I'm still like in my classes, still getting the biology degree and doing all of that. And so, as they were teaching me about what they did, very similar to what I had to learn about the restaurant, you have to learn about the wine, you have to learn about the food. So, I had to learn about marketing, I had to learn about advertising and the services that they were offering. And I like completely just fell in love with it. I loved everything about the agency, I loved everything that they did. And over a span of a couple of months, realized I don't want to get a degree in biology. I want to change my major to marketing and I want to be and do this. And so that is literally what I did. And so that's how I started my career in marketing. I wouldn't say I was quite with the creative job title at that time, but then as I took the next job and the next job and started rolling up my sleeves and getting more into this area of marketing and advertising and all of these things, I started to realize that I enjoyed the creative side of it. And so the next big milestone in my journey was fast forward maybe about 15 years. At this time, I was married, I was having children, and I was a stay-at-home mom for a short stint. We had two daughters kind of close in age. And at that time, the cost of daycare was more than my paycheck. And so I decided to stay home for about a year and a half. And during that time, I would take the kids and like our outing was to go to the gym and if I could get an exercise class in. And so I was new to the area. I was now living in Charleston, South Carolina. And I saw this magazine. It was really cool. It was oversized. It was like this big tabloid format, and it was called Skirt Magazine. And it really attracted me. The cover was like this really cool artwork, and it had this poetry on the front, and it was really nicely done. And so it was free. So I was like, "This is cool." So I grabbed it and I took it home with me. Well, I consumed it. I loved it so much. And then, the next month, another one came out. The next month, another one came out. And I was like, man, I really love this magazine. Well, my husband came home one day from work and I said, I think I'm ready to go back to work, but I don't really know what I want to do. I don't know a lot of people here. I don't have a big network. So I guess I'll start looking into some agencies and see if there's an opportunity out here. Maybe they need some help with business development or whatever. Well, the very next month, the Skirt magazine came out and I opened it and it said, we're hiring. And it said, we're looking for sales executives to sell our advertising. And I was like, oh, I got this. This is all me. So I applied for the job. I ended up getting the job and I started, very soon after that. And that was my first exposure to working in publishing, but also working with an art director and an editor and copywriting in a different way than I had seen what we did at the agency. And like I said, all the things that I did in between really lent itself to fueling my creativity and fueling my desire to understand that world more and want to be a part of it. And I found myself, always sitting at my desk in the sales meeting, but listening to the publisher and the editor and the art director talk about, well, what's the layout going to be and who's going to be, what's the cover design going to be and what's this other stuff going to be. And it was just something that was clicking inside of me. And so after being there for a little while, I sort of worked my way up to associate publisher. And then eventually the woman who founded the magazine and the original publisher, she retired and she sold the magazine to another company and I was promoted to the publisher. And so then I really got to flex those skills because then I was the one collaborating with the art director and the editor and doing all of this stuff. And I loved it. I loved it. It was definitely, I feel very fortunate to have had two really amazing jobs in what I would call my grown-up career. And Skirt Magazine was definitely the first one. And then when I left Skirt, it brought me to where I am today. And this is definitely the second one. So that's sort of in a nutshell how I ended up in a creative field and how I ended up realizing that creative roles were my passion and that I really could find a lot of joy in mixing the business and sales side of things with the creativity, execution, and deliverables side of things.
And so it's interesting. You originally went to study biology
Yeah.
and then you changed. But even then, you were head of publishing. So did you study editing or content creation or any of that?
No, I was honestly very fortunate that I did end up graduating from college when I was at the original marketing firm. Like I said, I changed my major, and so I do have an undergrad degree in marketing, and
Mhm.
so that kind of kept the door open for me getting into some of those things. But while I was there, it was actually a client that we had at that first job that they were a clothing designer, and they were based out of Boston, Massachusetts. And I got the opportunity to work really closely with them and see sort of what the side of fashion marketing really looked like. And so I got a marketing degree, but I had a fashion marketing focus. And so in doing that, I ended up doing like a study abroad in Italy, where I was there during Milan Fashion Week. And I really got to see another side of creativity, textiles and design and all of these other things. And while I didn't have a desire to actually be a fashion designer or a textile designer, I still got to see all of that come together. And then the event of the fashion show and the fit of the models and making sure that things were cohesive and that you were bringing this whole brand and this whole line to life. And so all of those things sort of influenced how I got to the publishing role at Skirt. But the thing about Skirt was because it was a small independent magazine that was really based in this small city in South Carolina, we had so much autonomy. And through that, if I say I worked at like Condé Nast and I was like the publisher of Vogue or something, I probably wouldn't be doing all of the things on the creative side. I would have been more just focused on the business side. But because of who we were, you really had a hand in all of those things. And the business side of it really was making sure that your ads were successful. And a part of that is advertising design and knowing what types of ads are going to work well, because this was pre-digital, right? When I started at Skirt, there was no Facebook ads, there was no Google ads. It was traditional advertising.
Right.
And so you
Print
really
advertising and
print
advertorials and all of that.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you really had to learn all of that. And that's when having that fashion marketing focus, I had to take color theory. I had to take certain design courses. When I did my study abroad in Milan, I did have to take as a part of the curriculum one fashion design course. I still have my portfolio. None of the pieces have ever seen the light of day, but it forced me to do a little bit of figure drawing. And like, those aren't things that I think I'm particularly excellent at, but they all helped me to understand how things work together and how, the outcomes of great design take a lot of different people and a lot of different skill sets to bring it all together.
It's definitely a collaboration. So, your transition to Trio Solutions
Mhm.
seems like a natural evolution. What was it about Trio that made you want to take the leap?
Yeah. So obviously getting back to my agency roots was certainly something that was alluring to me. But the other thing is, I've been super blessed. The woman, the founder and the CEO of Trio, her agency, they actually had some clients that ran ads in the magazine. And so I knew Jessica, that's her name, Jessica Monday.
Yeah.
I knew her almost as one of my clients before I actually became her employee. And so we had a relationship. I had a relationship with some of the people on her team, some of the account managers that managed the accounts that were running ads in the magazine. So when I decided to take the leap and leave Skirt magazine, and that was for reasons of the company that owned them was getting ready to sell again. And I
Mhm.
just didn't want to be a part of that transition. And so
Okay.
when I decided, I didn't have another job lined up. I literally came home and told my husband, okay, I'm quitting my job. I don't know what I'm going to do, but hopefully I can find something. And I had sent out an email to a really small group of professionals that I really respected, that I had known over the years working at Skirt. And I just said, hey, my time has come at Skirt. I'm leaving. I don't have anything lined up. If you know of anything, please reach out to me. And so I don't know, a couple of days later, I got this email from Jessica, the owner of Trio, and she said, hey, would you like to go to lunch? And I was like, sure. I had zero expectations. I didn't really know what it was all about. And when we met and had lunch, she said, I'm at this point with my agency where I've been the sole leader for several years and I can't do it by myself anymore. And we have this opportunity to scale and grow, but I need more leaders and I need more help. And so she said, how do you feel about that? Would you be interested in joining me? And so I said yes. And I came into Trio, and they did not at the time even have a creative director. They were a smaller agency. They did have an art director and a graphic designer, and they had a copywriter, and they were doing things that a full service marketing agency would do, but just on a little bit of a smaller scale than what we are now. And so as we came in, Jessica was also, which I'm sure in a lot of entrepreneurial journeys, especially with a creative output, that person ends up wearing all the hats, right? So they're the
Mm.
creative, they're also the bookkeeper, they're also the office cleaner, they're all the things. And so Jessica didn't have someone with the title of creative director, but she was basically serving as that as well.
Mm.
And so that was a responsibility that she gave to me very early on. And she said, because of your background with Skirt, because of your own desires and talents, what are the things that we would want to kind of divide up and what would you want to lead the charge on? And she said, I think it would make sense for you to lead the creative team. And I said, I totally agree. And I would love to do that. And so we sort of charted our own course with that and figured out what creative direction looked like for Trio and for our agency. I think it's important. I'm very honored to have this title of one of the top chief creative officers, but I think that role looks different in
Mhm.
across industries. I think it looks
Mm.
different across different agencies. And I think the skill sets that we bring to the table look different as well.
Hmm. And so when you were given this opportunity at Trio Solutions, did you have any hesitations, any doubts that came up?
I didn't have a doubt about joining the team, but
Mhm.
as Jessica started to give me more responsibility.
Uh-huh.
I started off, doing like creative director and sort of like a COO. So that was my original title. And I was helping her to kind of run the day-to-day operations of the agency with a focus on creative. That was probably what it was in a nutshell. And we were doing well. And we grown our clients. We had grown our ability to output deliverables. We had grown our team a little bit. And so after a couple of years, she came to me and she said she had her own dreams and goals and desires as an entrepreneur, as
Uh-huh.
a creative,
Mhm.
as a marketing professional. And she said, I want to pursue some other things as well. Like, I don't want this to be the end for me. And so she went ahead to open some other businesses and has had other ventures on the side. And so at that moment in her life and her career, and she was assessing what she wanted out of it, she said to me, I would really like to make you the president of the agency. And at that moment, yeah, the imposter syndrome definitely crept in. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, okay, I know how to do, I know how to help the creative team. I know how to lead the creative team. I've had lots of, one of the amazing things about working at Trio is even though we're small, we pour into our culture. We pour into our people. Jessica has invested in leadership coaching for me. And I've been to seminars and books and, professional development and all of these things because at the heart of it, less you're going to just be producing your creative in a bubble, you're doing it with people. And
Mhm.
you really have to understand and be empathetic to people. You have to have a high, emotional IQ. You have to be willing to be in a situation where you can get the very best creative out of people because we all have good days and bad days, right? And we all have ruts and we all have, creative blocks and all those things. So yes, when she offered me the role of president, I did say yes. I remember driving home after that conversation and being like, oh my gosh, like this is legit. Like, what am I doing? And I was nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big step. And I love that you focused on the importance of having that high emotional IQ and the personal development. And in addition to recruitment here at Elysian, we also offer coaching and organizational consulting, which helps with the mindset because, and this is specifically why I want to offer this to creatives and creative teams, is because being creative is fun, right? But being creative on a bad day or being creative when those client restrictions seem like a lot or the feedback that you're getting kind of puts a damper on the fun. Having that right mindset to navigate that in a way that is empowering and helpful is key. So I'm glad that you all are doing that there because that does make a big difference. What helps you when you are being challenged or even when you do step into a big role?
So I won't get too deep into it, but we do run on EOS at Trio, and
Mhm.
EOS is an operating system for small businesses, and we've been doing it for about 3 years, and it really has made a big impact for us. But through that process, we met someone who was an EOS implementer who has now since become one of my friends, and I just have a lot of respect for her. And she said something to me that resonated with me like several years ago when we started our EOS journey, and she said, there's no comfort in the learning zone and no learning in the comfort zone.
I
And,
love that.
that is
Nice.
something that I say to our team all the time. It's a mantra that we have adopted
Yep.
and something that I had to face very quickly because while I still continued to be the chief creative officer, I also was the president of the agency, and they have overlap, but there's also a new sense of responsibility and accountability that goes with that. And so yeah, I had to realize that I had to push myself and that I was going to make mistakes. And sometimes as creatives, when we have other duties and responsibilities, and it doesn't have to be because you have another title at your job. It could be a duty and a responsibility in your personal life,
Mm.
children, a marriage, an aging parent, sickness, whatever comes your way, that can affect your ability to be creative. And so you have to constantly talk to yourself and you have to remind yourself why you're here and why you do these things. And also, I think we have all seen in the world that oftentimes with pain, the outcomes can be something really beautiful. And so, whether nobody wants tragedy to happen, sometimes in the face of that, things can, communities can come together, or artwork can be
Mhm.
developed, or solutions can be discovered, and all of these things. And so, I think that that's a big part of the creative journey, and realizing that, life's a roller coaster and you've got to constantly envelop like a growth mindset. That's another thing we talk a lot to our team about, is just embracing that growth mindset. And it's like, okay, yeah, are there days where I need to have my 5 minute pity party for myself? Sure, I do,
Mhm.
And it's like, what are you going to do after that?
Right. Always be growing.
Yes. Yep.
So, you touched on a little earlier in our conversation about your transition from a full-time worker to a stay-at-home mom to then back a full-time worker. How was that experience? Because
Yeah.
that's a big transition, and I know a lot of working moms experience that. So, I'd love to hear how that was for you.
Yeah. That is not an easy thing for moms to do, or, even parents. I know there could be single, they don't even have to be single, but there could be stay-at-home dads there, or single dads or single parents that, face these same kinds of challenges. And then, of course, add COVID and all of the other stuff into that, and the whole just remote workforce and everything that we have going on today. For me, the stay-at-home mom stint was happening about 18 years ago. So the landscape was a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I was concerned. People will ask you, why is there a gap in your resume? Or, now that you've been out of the loop, do you understand the latest and greatest technology? Or, how do we know that you can compete with these other people that don't have to go home to kids, and all of these kinds of things? The self-doubt can really creep in, and you start to question your ability, or, do I really deserve this job? This other person's been working really hard this whole time and they didn't take a break. And so maybe they deserve the promotion, or they should get it over me. And yeah, it's really easy to let all these doubts and things pop into your head. But I think once you get in there and you start realizing and enjoying the work again, I love my children. I love my family. I love being a mom. That is my number one most important job. And I can also love my job at Trio. I think that that's perfectly okay. And I think today that's a more acceptable statement. I feel like even maybe when my mom, because I had a working mom, maybe when my mom was raising me, it was looked at a little differently. I do think we have evolved as a society in that way, where it's okay to be a working parent. But yeah, it was hard. There'd always be the moms who didn't have jobs, and they were the ones that could volunteer at the school, or be there on the field day, or make the cookies for the bake sale, all of those cliche things. It was a real thing for me to say, yeah, I can't do that. And then to have to tell your child, well, mommy can't come to this because she has to go to work, right? And then they say, well, so and so's mommy doesn't have to go to work. Why do you have to go to work? I mean, I had those heartbreaking conversations with my children. But then fast forward to where they're young adults, and our youngest is a junior in high school, so we've almost got all of them, through the school age years. And now I see them. When I won the award for the top chief creative officer, unprompted, my daughter posted it on her Instagram, and it said, like, my mom's cooler than your mom, or something like that. So I realized, I mean, she has a small circle of influence, but that meant a lot to me, because it was like, okay, it may have stung a little bit that I couldn't do some of the things at one point in time, but I was modeling behavior and demonstrating to them what it means to be able to have a family and to be able to have a career, creative or otherwise. And then I saw that paying off in the way that she was proud of me, and that the way that my children want to go and have jobs and have families and do all of that. So,
Hmm. And so you mentioned that your mom was a working mom.
mhm.
Do you feel like you were inspired or maybe influenced in any way, whether it was a plus or a negative to be a working mom?
Yes, 100%. So not only was my mom a working mom, but my mom did not have a college education when she entered the workforce. So she graduated from high school. Very shortly after that, met my dad, and they got married and had three daughters. And so I'm the oldest of three. And my mom was actually a school bus driver. And she always had sort of odd part-time jobs. We were a middle-class family. I had a great upbringing. I was raised in New Hampshire, but my dad's family was in the transportation business. And so part of that was school busing. And so when my dad sort of broke off from his family, he decided that him and my mom, they were going to buy, and this was a thing. They bought a piece of property with 30 school buses on it, and they bought a school bus company. And there was a house on the front of the property, that's where we lived, and 30 school buses behind us. Now, if you're a kid, having 30 school buses in your backyard is like the coolest thing ever. I mean, we played hide and seek in those things. We played school, we played bus driver. It was so cool to grow up in that space. But yeah, my dad ran the bus company and my mom drove the bus. And so it was like one of those things that, when I was little, I thought that was so awesome. And fast forward a little bit through that, my dad ended up getting sick. And so he got sick, and he got sick rather quickly, and he was no longer able to work. And as a result, they lost when you own those buses, you have to bid on contracts with school districts to be awarded the opportunity to have the routes. And because of his sickness, they lost their bid and they were no longer able to do that. And my parents filed bankruptcy and had to sell the bus company. And that was very devastating for us. My mom continued to work even when my dad was sick. And so she ended up going to another transportation company in the next city over. And she started off as a bus driver there, but I watched her go from bus driver to dispatcher to area manager and to that site manager. And then she got to this point where the company came to her and they said, listen, we'd love to keep promoting you, but we have a rule that you have to have a college degree to go any farther in your career path. And so they said, but we will pay for you to go to school. And so my mom at like 55 years old went to college and got her undergrad degree and became the vice president of safety for this national school bus company. And that was very inspiring to me because I literally watched her start off as a bus driver and then become a huge success in the industry.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's so great. I'm glad you shared that with us. So there are a lot of challenges with being a working mom, and yet we're setting an example and inspiring our children in ways that sometimes we're not even aware of, right?
Yeah.
So Trio has a strong emphasis on culture.
Yeah.
And so how do you foster an environment where creativity thrives?
Yes. We're big on, like I said, we use that operating system, which also really celebrates and embraces your core values. And for us, a lot of corporations have core values. A lot of organizations have mission statements, for profit and nonprofit alike. And it is good. Everybody wants to see those words on the wall: excellence and determination and creativity and all that. And those are important things.
Yeah.
Words on a wall and showing up every day and putting those things into practice, those are two very different things. And we have worked really hard to make sure that they're not just words on a wall. A lot of companies do this, but one of the things with our core values is to make them active, right? So for us, one of our core values is passionate and grateful. Like, we want to be passionate and grateful. It's a get to do, not a have to do when we're serving our clients. So looking at that as a privilege. And making sure that if you were to kind of walk down the offices at Trio and you were to pull any team member aside and say to them, hey, do you know Trio's core values? Not only do I think that 100% of the people would score 100% on that quiz, but if you ask them to explain, like, what does that mean? I truly believe they could give you a good definition, and they would all be different. And that's the beauty of that. So they know what the values are, but they define them and live them out all a little bit differently. And so giving them that space to say, okay, here's the parameters of the values. Like, this is how Trio operates. This is how we live and die. This is why we show up in the morning. But then you can take those values and interpret them and make them your own so that it makes you passionate and grateful, right? Another one of ours is humbly confident. We want you to have just the right amount of confidence, but we want you to be humble in that, So we've really invested a lot of energy and time into that. Not just money, but just time. We do once a quarter, we have something called Values Day at Trio, where we come together half a day. We're not logging any billable time, and we're doing something that helps us to feel re-energized by our values. We have another event that we do 3 times a year called Fun Patrol. And that's just, we're completely out of the office. We're out doing things together. It could be something creative. It could be something in nature. It could be something more athletic. We've done axe throwing and dragon boat rowing and making goat cheese on a goat farm, all different types of things. So that we can build relationships with one another and we can build trust, because without trust, it's really hard to get the results that you want. And I don't mean trust like, oh, is this person going to steal my purse out of my office? I mean trust like, hey, if I say I'm going to do something, can you believe that I'm going to do it? That kind of stuff.
So you mentioned that once a quarter you get together and you do something to celebrate your values. Can you give us
Mhm.
an example?
Yeah. So sometimes it's a celebration, but sometimes it's like an exercise.
Okay.
So another one of our values is making our mark. And when we say making our mark, it's making sure that we are not becoming stagnant in our field. So this was probably one of the more fun ones in Values Day history. But if you go back a couple of years with me when TikTok really started taking off, and I'm not afraid to say I'm almost 51 years old. And even though social media is a huge part of what we do as a full service marketing agency, and even though I am well aware of the importance of social media in our world,
Mhm.
sometimes it's not my default mechanism. I don't necessarily always think about, oh, I just want to be scrolling social media, but I know the impact that that has on our world. And so when we said, okay, we're going to start offering TikTok management to our clients, because we felt like, all right, well, we're already managing Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So now TikTok's all the rage. We got to figure out how to make TikToks, and we got to start offering TikTok management. Well, I mean, my teenagers made TikToks. And as far as I knew, it was like learning little dances to clips of music. And this was TikTok has evolved a lot since it started, but that's what it really was in the beginning. And so we came in on Values Day one day, and I said, okay, which normally I would never say, everyone take out your phones, right? Normally I'm like, silence your phones and put them away. And I want you present and here with me. But I was like, no, everyone take out your phones. And we spent the day breaking up. I broke everyone up into little teams, and we had to make TikToks. And we learned how to, make a TikTok, how to find trending audio, how to do all of the things, how to edit it. And we made it like a little contest, and we, posted them on our own TikToks, and we saw which one performed the best and which one got the most likes and that kind of stuff. And, for us, that was definitely about making our mark. And, I think I've shared 3 of them. We have 5 core values, but the last 2 that I haven't shared is being relationship obsessed and being deliberately excellent. And so I do feel like we embraced a lot of those values that day, because we committed to, hey, marketing's not going to look the same tomorrow as it did today, and we have to challenge ourselves to stay up with that. And so that was something where it was like we got to demonstrate our values inwardly, we got to practice that together, and then we got to share that outwardly with our clients.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a good reminder to everybody that marketing, it's an expertise. And I know a lot of people try to do their own marketing, but it's so important to hire the experts because marketing is always changing. And so to bring on experts, there's real value in that. What is your opinion and perspective of that?
Absolutely. I could not agree more with you. And I think that there's a lot of amazing tools that have been created to solve marketing problems in the world.
Mhm.
And the reality is, there's a lot of small businesses out there and a lot of home-based businesses and entrepreneurs and such, that they need to be able to have those resources available to them. So there are some things that, you might decide, oh, I'm not going to put that in the budget. And then other things that you decide are absolute must-haves. And I think when it comes to marketing, at the very least, partnering with some sort of professional to get the plan in place, whether that's making sure that the brand is solid or making sure that the marketing plan makes sense and aligns with the goals of the business and what you're trying to achieve. Those to me are the non-negotiables, because when we talk about creative execution, sometimes it boils down to personal preference. What I think might be something that looks stellar or would be award winning, someone else in the very same field may not agree with me. And so when we talk about art and creativity, it's so subjective, and there's so many ways in which we can express ourselves through creativity. So as far as hiring the experts, there's a reason why we do what we do, and it's not by accident. It is with intentionality, and you wouldn't go to your neighbor and say, "Hey, I've played the game Operation a lot. Get the scalpel. I think I'm ready to take your appendix out or something," right? Like you would never do that. Yet people will say, "Oh, I've watched a lot of Instagram videos, or I opened a Canva account. And so, okay, watch out. I don't need any professionals. I'm just going to do the marketing myself." And for some people, I'm sure that probably does work. And we all have seen it. Everybody has seen it. There are successful people out there with brands that don't look great, or that make mistakes, or have bad calls, or whatever the case may be. But that's the risk you have to take. And I have seen it time and time again where people have come to Trio and said, "Okay, we tried to do this ourselves and we messed up," or "We hired somebody that wasn't a professional, and I think we shouldn't have cut on the budget, and we probably should have just come to the professionals in the first place." So I think it's like that with anything. You can either paint your own house or you can hire professional painters, you know?
Mm-hmm. So Trio focuses on small to mid-size businesses. You're not going for those big global brands.
Yeah.
So is that intentional as well?
Absolutely. For us, our passion, our purpose is to make a difference through transformative marketing.
Mhm.
And transformation can come in all shapes and sizes, right? Not only are we not located in a big metropolitan area like a New York or Chicago or Atlanta or something like that, we also, our founder, she has her master's in health administration, and she started her marketing career in the healthcare and hospital space. And all types of industries need marketing and communications, and all brands need a way to communicate, because the reality is, if you're not being intentional with how you're communicating, you're sending a message anyway. And so for us, when we say small to mid-size, it's like we want to help people on their marketing journey. Now, that does not mean that I don't applaud or even have mad respect for big global brands like the Nikes of the world that have limited budgets and can invest in top tier talent and celebrities and all of those things. Like those have a place in the marketing realm, and they are very important. But so does the little nonprofit that's just trying to help fight homelessness in their community, right? And that's just trying to seek donors from the private sector within a 10-mile radius of where they're located. And to me, that's equally as important. And that's where we can really make a difference, and we can see the ripple effect, and we can feel the impact of the work that we're doing. And it's very rewarding. And I think that's why we do have great tenure on Team Trio, because people get to see the impact of their work. And you also get to see gratitude on the clients' faces. And when they're excited to come back and say, "Hey, you guys created this billboard for us, and our event sold out, and we made our fundraising goal, and now we can help X number of people." And that's just in the nonprofit space. We work in healthcare and private education. And yeah, we might have done the ad for recruitment for enrollment to go to this certain school, but then that child goes on to get a scholarship and go to the college of their dreams, and then become the next CEO or president or astronaut or creative or podcast person. Like, you just don't know the impact that the things that you're doing, if you do them with intention, if you truly take the time to understand the audience and be thoughtful with your creative, the possibilities are endless.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that you say being thoughtful with the creative. It also sounds from the beginning of our conversation that you were very thoughtful in your jobs. You had a job at the restaurant. You were still in school. You were going to be a biology major. And two men who kept coming back to the restaurant really noticed your work ethic and how talented you were. And so, how important is it, even if you don't like the job you're currently at, or you know that this isn't where you want to be, how important is it to bring a strong work ethic to that position?
Yeah, it's extremely important. I talked a few minutes ago about the company's core values, but you have to have your own core values, right?
Mm,
You have to decide, is my work just transactional? Am I just here to get a paycheck? Which that could be true, and that probably is true for a lot of people. But in my opinion, that doesn't lead to a very fulfilled life. And I purposely didn't say happy life because I don't think money or tenure or job title necessarily equals happiness. That's not what I'm saying, but fulfillment, right? And I think everybody wants to feel that what they've done, whether you were the person that took my order at the Chick-fil-A drive-through, whether you were the person that helped push my groceries and put them in the back of my car, or whether you were the person that created the next drug that's going to cure cancer, right? It doesn't matter what the job is, but you have to be able to find fulfillment in that because our jobs don't define our worth. We define our own self-worth, and everybody's worthy of having fulfillment in whatever it is that they do every day.
and you had said that you really admire restaurant workers
Yeah.
and that you would even hire a restaurant worker without experience in the agency world. Can you explain that a little bit more?
So I feel like I do have a lot of respect for restaurant workers. And I do think that when we talk about like cross industry sort of pollination, right?
Mhm.
For a while there, it was like in America, you have to have a 4-year degree. And like even my mom experienced that, right? Like you can only go so
Right.
far, you can only climb the ladder so far if you don't have this piece of paper. I do think that we've gotten away from that a little bit and in a good way. I think that part of what makes people really great at their jobs is taking those lived experiences and making sure that they're applicable across industries. So there are things that can be learned, from a variety of different jobs that we've had that we can bring to the table in marketing. And so for me, you could not have been a restaurant worker and have never learned how to code a website and come be my web developer. Like that's not possible, right? You have to know that. But
Mhm.
what you could do is you could come and maybe be a copywriter or an account manager or something else that's still in the creative field, but doesn't require like traditional training. We have had people come through the doors of Trio that are self-taught in some things too, right? It's just about the repetition of it. Even our current web developer now, he sort of had that mid-career swap where he didn't start off going to school for web development, but did have computer IT related job, but then decided he really had a passion for the web development side of things and then leaned into that and was able to teach himself some things and got really good at what he did. So to circle it back to what you were asking about the restaurant worker, I do feel like people from all industries can come and have agency experience. But what I would say is you have to be willing to come in at that entry level and be open to learning and exploring and growing as the position needs you to, because you have to have some experience depending on what the role is at the agency.
Mhm. And I've worked with many creatives who have come out of the best design schools in the
Mm.
nation, and I respect that. I wanted us to really talk to those people in the audience today who may be in a job that just is not life giving and they do love to do something creative on the side and they're thinking of maybe can I do something full time, and imposter syndrome or paradigms, whatever you want to label them, are coming up of, well, you've never done that before, and being able to encourage them that you can get over those limited thoughts and move into a creative role if it's something that is really calling you.
Yes, I do agree with that. And there's that I think it was like a meme or something that has circulated over the years multiple times, but it's like all the people that didn't fulfill their dreams or sort of accomplish their goals until they were like in their 50s. It was like Colonel Sanders found the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe, on the side of the road or something at 50 something years old, or, Martha Stewart and Oprah and some of these other people, they didn't really start. I think Morgan Freeman got his first acting job in his 50s, right? And so you look at these people and you're like, wow, look at how accomplished they are. Look at how creative they were. Look at how they were able to do all of these things. It is never too late to exercise your creative muscle. And whether or not that could lend itself to a full-time job for you, I think is solely dependent on you. I mean, there's a lot of creative jobs out there. It doesn't just have to be in marketing or in a marketing agency for that matter. There's so many ideas popping into my mind right now. I can't even articulate them all at once. So what I would say to people is, if you have a desire to be doing something creative, start small. Think about just like what in your own circle of influence, what you can where you can do that. It could be your neighborhood Facebook page, or it could be a place that you volunteer, or like at your church or something like that, where you have the opportunity to make a flyer, decorate for an event, promote something and come up with a plan. I mean, there's so many opportunities, and there's so many ways, like I talked about those tools. When you're wanting to do things for yourself and you're wanting to do things on that more community level, use those tools. I mean, I would use the heck out of them and trial and error and do things. Also being willing to maybe take a class or reach out to somebody, get a mentor. And I don't think mentors are just for young people. You can be 60 years old and have a mentor, especially if you're looking to make an industry change. So the only thing keeping your creativity stagnant, I feel like, truly is you.
Is there anything else you would like to tell our audience today?
I mean, I've just really enjoyed the topics. Thank you for the questions. It's always fun to kind of walk down memory lane. I feel very re-energized just by having this conversation, because it is easy to take for granted, the opportunities that we have. And just hearing myself take you on a little part of my journey has made me realize what an amazing journey it has been, and that the journey's not over, and that there are still more dreams that we can accomplish and dream about, and just don't stop.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And thank you, Jenny, for participating in my show. And I'd love for you to come back to the show so that we can continue to hear about your journey.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. It was an honor. And just knowing that someone would be interested in hearing what I have to say is really nice.
And thank you for joining my show, Empowering Creatives to Live Their Dreams. I'm Jessica Osrak. You can do it. I believe in you.